Okay, I think we can start. I see people is joining. Hello and welcome to Versasec product webinar. My name is Tatiana. I'm business development analyst at Versasec, and I will be your host for today's session. Joining me today is John Asan, technical leader at Versasec, who will walk us through the latest features in Versasec Credential Management, highlighting major updates in version 6.11 to 6.12. And we are sharing more details about upcoming release 7.0. I'm very excited. So before we kick off the presentation, I will be sharing a few housekeeping rules. All attendees are muted through the session. If you wish to ask a question, which we will handle at the end of the session, please submit them through Q&A chat you will see on the bottom of your panel. This webinar is automatically recorded and you will be shared with you after webinar. Please feel free to share it with your colleagues. John, I'm handing the word to you.
Yep, thanks, Tanya, and welcome everyone. Good to have you all here today. So as Tanya mentioned, we're going to start covering the first half will be the major features introduced in 6.11 and 6.12. That's Versasec CMS version 6.11, 6.12. And then in the second part, we'll give you a sneak peek look at some of the upcoming features in the highly anticipated release of 7.0. So yeah, I think without further ado, I think, yeah, let's start. All right, so to start with, one of the key enhancements that we made on version 6, I believe it was 6.11 here, is the ability to manage biometric enrollment for FIDO2 devices that include a fingerprint reader. And basically how that works is that the FIDO2 bio device is initially configured, enabled on the CMS side FIDO2 template. During issuance, you normally set the pin must be set first. And once that's done, the Versasec CMS handles the fingerprint enrollment process. And this can be initiated either through the user or through what we call the operator, the admin, to register the fingerprint, the biometric credentials of the user. So you have the flexibility to have a centralized or a self-service enrollment process here. Continuing on the FIDO line, the FIDO 2.1 standard introduced a set of core security features by the FIDO Alliance, which applies to all FIDO credentials, of course, that need to comply to that standard. Now, many enterprises, of course, wanted some additional controls beyond what is available on that standard. So certain credentials were introduced with these enterprise features, which of course are manageable in Versasec CMS. Start with some of those. If we start with the force pin change option, you can set the force pin change option through Versasec CMS applications by setting a flag on that during issuance. You set that temporary pin, and then that's dispatched to the user. When the user uses that FIDO device, it's going to require the user to change the pin on that first use. Features such as disable FIDO2 reset or block device reset. You can lock the device so your user cannot reset that FIDO token. Prevents users themselves from resetting devices through Windows, let's say, or would-be attackers from resetting the devices and erasing all those keys. It's a great feature there. If we go into the setting minimum pin length, or set up that policy so you can set a minimum pin length value, which I believe today is only numeric value. The other one there, that enforce user verification. So if you want to enforce a PIN for authentication, for example, if your IDP does not require PIN for authentication, you can enforce it on the credential here. You can set it, on the using the Versasec CMS application to enforce this on that device. A great setting. The allow list or application allow list, you want to allow users to specific IDPs only with the FIDO. So if they try to provision to another IDP, they wouldn't be able to do so. That allow list defines which relay party sites the FIDO2 device can be used at. That allow list is stored on the device and can be managed via the Versasec CMS administrator in the system in the consoles. And last but not least, the FIDO2 device management, or the management key, managed through Versasec CMS, is really what makes it possible to manage and control these enterprise features. So it allows you to, of course, enforce all these settings and policies. This is an example of the Versasec CMS admin application, specifically the FIDO2 enterprise template. What we call the EF configuration, or the extended features configuration in the template. As you can see, the FIDO2 reset by user here is showing blocked, which means the user cannot reset that, or anyone access to that credential cannot reset that FIDO credential. Always require user verification boxes checked off, right? So that, again, means it will be enforced on the credential regardless if the IDP requires it or not. The relay party ID allow list IDP there for Microsoft.com, for example, if you're using only Entra ID and you want that only the Entra ID FIDO2 credentials can be allowed there. Setting the minimum pin length, setting allowed relay party ID list to get minimum pin length information. So you set a list, for example, of the relaying parties allowed to ask that device for the minimum pin length can also be set there. On the right-hand side, you have an example of our Versasec CMS user application, the self-service application, and the pin on block function for the FIDO2. So if you block your pin, let's say on a standard FIDO 2.1 token, you would have to reset it. And you have to, of course, you could use Versasec CMS application to reset it, but you would be, and reset would erase all the FIDO keys you have and the IDPs you have to basically reprovision. So with the extended features credential, you can do an unblock of these tokens, or smart cards, of course, for the FIDO2. Very great feature there. NFC FIDO2 management. Now, Versasec CMS can now also manage the FIDO2 credentials over NFC. So you have full lifecycle management for contactless FIDO2 credentials. They're NFC based. Ideal for organizations that deploy NFC only FIDO2 credentials, and of course need to manage them. Oh, so these are very nice feature there. Integration with continued integration with our partners. So our collaboration with Microsoft brought you FIDO2 management for your users in Entra ID. The integration with Ping Identity, IDP, Ping One for workforce for FIDO credential management as well. Both, of course, making it possible for you to manage FIDO2 credentials centrally or via self-service for your IDP users. New credentials there and the list, again, this what we added on version 6.11. That's the Thales SafeNet e-token Fusion NFC PIV. This is a Thales device with enterprise features and also contains the new PIV version 4.0. And you have the Thales SafeNet e-token Fusion FIPS. All the Fusion devices from Thales contain both PKI and PIV, PKI, PIV, and FIDO applets. You have the Thales SafeNet ID Core 3121 FIDO. This is the FIDO 2 smart card with contactless NFC interface only. Then we have the Token 2, our new partner for Token 2. And this is this series, can contain different variations of these tokens. All right, so partnership with Fortinex and integration with their HSM, FX2200 HSM, used in Versasec CMS to store the master key on that HSM. Then we have Fortified ID. Fortified ID provides essential web-based applications for users to access all their assigned systems, applications. And the integration with CMS basically allows the users to authenticate to the Fortified ID application using either certificate-based authentication or FIDO credentials. So the idea is the organization deploys the Fortified ID and portal and configures it to integrate with their existing PKI or IDPs. And then through Versasec CMS, you'd issue the physical, virtual, smart cards, tokens, whatever. And then once you issue those credentials with either certificates or FIDO, depending on what's configured there with Fortified ID, the environment, when you access the Fortified ID, users would authenticate certificate-based through their credentials, either through CBA or FIDO credentials. Single sign-on there. Great value with Fortified ID for those of you who use that. Moving on to Thales ID Prime. With this, with the previous release as well in 6th version, we've added support for Thales ID Prime Virtual Smart Card, which sits on a server, and a virtual smart card here with the RFID use case and functionality. So a great use case really for this is, as you can see in the image there, the shared workstations where you have multiple users can securely log in using just their existing RFID badge. You don't need a physical smart card. But I would say it's just as valuable in any environment where you'd all like to, you're using badge ID RFIDs and you like to map an RFID badge to a virtual smart card container containing certs for authentication. So basically how it works is the RFID badge is read by the NFC reader on the workstation. Our application then checks the RFID, mapping that to identify the user. And from there, you get loaded the Thales ID Prime Virtual Smart Card, makes it available for authentication on the logon screen. The user simply enters the PIN and they're in. Quick, seamless, secure, of course, using strong certificate-based authentication there. Some enhancements. We enhanced here on the way, we check for AD group permissions during credential issuance. So previously we had, and this is a long-standing feature that we have, operators and users had to belong to the same group for permission validation. With this update, they can be in different groups that are also mapped together. And this is useful in environments where you have different teams maybe or locations that need to administer those credentials. You're still making sure that only the authorized users and their admins can manage those specific credentials. Adding on to the enhancements, we introduced a PIN expiration notification feature to make sure users are reminded when their PIN is about to expire or is overdue. So instead of users finding out at the worst possible time, they would proactively and continuously get reminders. Moving on to our self-service, the Versasec CMS user application, which is self-service for multi-configuration. So previously on the self-service application, if you were to use different devices that would require a mini driver and let's say another device that would require a native access, you would have to go back in the config to set that level of access before you can perform your self-service functions. What we introduced here is a feature where you can set to use system-wide configuration. And that means the system would detect what device is in use and what's applicable for that credential access. So you can use a PIV for native access and a mini driver device on the same machine. So we've been constantly working on enhancing our product, and in version 6.11, some of our focus was, of course, on improving the issuance time. So faster issuance time, reducing the time it takes to issue credentials, making the process a bit more efficient for the admins and users, of course. Part of that as well was enhancing the system navigation. So you have a smoother experience when navigating through the different configuration screens. And that's across the board through our applications, the Versasec admin, agent, and user self-service application. Optimizing start time, especially important for the VDI and thin client users. So you have a better startup and reducing delays there. So overall, we found that these resulted in a 10% decrease in time spent on these recurring events. Yeah. All right, so we've gotten to the upcoming highly anticipated release of 7.0 and give you the highlights basically of those, the new features to come there. So this is one of our main features for 7.0 when issuing a FIDO device. You can configure and basically create multiple passkeys. So if you want to use your device together with Entra ID, Okta IDP, Glue IDP, we can generate generate those credentials, the FIDO2 credential for all, and add it for the user for all those IDPs during the issuance process, and also revoke them later when you revoke those credentials. So yeah, common if you're using multiple IDPs and you want to combine them. So basically you will create initially your credential template. All right, yeah, that's your workflow on the credential that you're going to use. You will then also need to create the FIDO template where you configure things like the PIN policy, fingerprint, so on. And then within your FIDO2 template, you would have your passkey template, your passkeys here, where you would select which IDPs and what passkeys you want to generate from which IDPs. Yeah. Some enhancements on the 7.0 on system health information. So the system health information can be configured now and be sent via email. You'll be notified for any of the system issues or even integrations, HSM is down, or other problems that may detect. We have also added these notifications within the console as a part of the system health information. So if you're going to the small yellow informational box there, you can pull this up when you select that bottom right ball icon, which can be red, yellow, or green, depending. It's green here, sorry, it's yellow here, and what problems it may have found. You'll see it there as well. See those notifications there as well. We're also adding the ability to push system health events and status messages directly to third-party systems using a webhook. So this would allow you for a more real-time monitoring with the external logging tools to ensure that system health updates are shared when they're needed. And you basically, on the webhook configuration, you can configure the URL where Versasec CMS will send the system health events and status updates. So this makes it more easy to integrate with third-party, like the platforms such as SIEM systems or other log monitoring tools. On the FIDO side, for a quick improvement here on a FIDO2 passkey display name, when we generate a FIDO2 passkey and add it for the user in the IDP, there's a display name for that passkey. Normally, this was a static value that you could add and set to your liking. Now you can add a dynamic value. So you can add email, UPN, card serial, etc. So yeah, and use that basically whatever works, whatever is best for the environment. User experience improvements. So we've added a description field for credential templates to help admins quickly understand the details of the template they are selecting. When you select issue and then select the template, you have a small description here. All right, you could use it for a variety of reasons, but I would say you can pick the correct credential template. Maybe you might have a guide or instruction there. It can act as a quick reference or reminder before proceeding as well. And the guide maybe ensures that you check to follow the right process and policies when issuing those credentials. Adding on to the user experience, we now show the logged on operator. That's the administrator that has access to the Versasec CMS console. We show the logged on operator name in the home screen. Moving on the user experience side, now you could directly unregister a credential from any one of the following lifecycle states: active, issued, inactive, and locked. So previously you would need to go to retired from any of these states. You would need to go to retired before you could unregister. We've added a quick shortcut there now so you can go directly to unregistered. This has been asked for a while and we finally put it through for you guys. All right. Additional certificates on PIV. So PIV devices typically allow for or have four main default certificate containers. And some devices include the additional key recovery archive. Sometimes they refer to it as expired containers. So Versasec CMS, with Versasec CMS now, you can configure these extra containers, enabling more certificates to be issued on that device. So for the additional certificates, one thing to know about this actually on the mini driver requirement side, in order for these additional certificates to be recognized and accessible in Windows, the PIV device vendor must provide a mini driver that supports them. So without the correct mini driver, Windows will not be able to read or utilize those extra stored certificates on the archive key containers on that PIV card. Another improvement on the issuance side, I would say. So in a combined PKI FIDO devices, you would only want the user, if it's issued via self-service, or the operator, if it's centralized, to set the PIN for the application that's being used. In this case, if it's the FIDO2 PIN. So if you're using and issuing the FIDO portion, but you have not configured a certificate on that template to be issued, we will only ask for the FIDO2 PIN, and vice versa. If you have disabled the FIDO part, but you've added certificates to the PKI portion of the template, then we will only ask you for the PKI PIN. Configuration changes log. Another big one here. So whenever someone sends a config change in CMS, it will now be logged in our system log, syslog repository. Used for auditing, researching issues, could be support-related tasks on things that have been changed, what was changed, who changed them, when it was changed. So information is there stored and available to those admins, of course, that have access to view and audit this information. Small list of credentials here. So we've added the Thales SafeNet 940B and 940C credentials on 7.0. So to promote our agent application, that's agent with a capital A, to customers and for really a nicer experience, especially for the help desk admins that issue on behalf of users. We have removed the option to install the admin application. So in a default install, you'll get only the agent and the server application. Now, it is possible to install the admin application again with a switch. And also, when upgrading, if you still are using the admin application on your client workstations, it will be available during the upgrade process. You don't have to go through and uninstall or anything like that. So that will still be available if your systems are already set up that way. Finally, some end of life announcements. So starting March 2026, support for, that's the up and coming, support for AEP Keeper plus HSM will end. Same on that date, support for along my M token crypto ID credentials will also come to an end. Starting April 2025, support for the FIS ID certificate management suite will also be ending. And some previous announcements there. December 2024 passed, support for Thales Luna HSM 5.x and 6.x has ended. The support, excuse me, the support for the 32-bit VSEC CMS server and VSEC CMS admin agent applications have also ended. So make sure you're running the 64-bit version of those. Not get the latest software and update to those. Support for the SOAP client interface has also ended on March. So ensure you're moving on towards the gRPC protocol. Database schemas 1 to 3. That is systems that are predate 6.0. I hope most of you are updated or all of you are updated. So if not, please get yourself updated to the latest and greatest version. And last but not least, on January 24, the development for the SOAP API has ended as well. I think that's pretty much all we have. Thank you. Tanya, handing it back over to you.
Yeah, thank you, John. Thank you for
You're welcome.
presentation. So now we have a time for few questions. John, I believe we have a few questions in Q&A. If you go to the chat.
Yep. Let's see. All right. Is the disabling resetting FIDO2 also locked when the user is using YubiKey Manager? Yes. Yes. That should be also locked from what I know. Absolutely. Any other questions? Let's see. Yep. Oh, let me pull that up here. Can V6 CMS manage FIDO2 keys over NFC? Yes, V6 CMS supports the NFC-based FIDO2 management on those certain credentials. You can look at the supported credentials on our website, but yes, so we can manage credentials that are NFC based only, FIDO2 management credentials, specific ones. So have a look at our website on the ones that we manage currently. What happens if a user tries to reset their FIDO device? So again, yeah, if that device reset is blocked for FIDO, the user cannot erase or remove the credentials for the FIDO. So that again prevents that unauthorized resets. Will there be a summary of these features available after the meeting? Yes, absolutely. We're gonna, Tanya, we're gonna send these out. The recording will also be available after some time on YouTube, and you'll get the information on the slides here.
Yeah, just to be clear on the version 7.0, so we invite you to follow up our news. So official release is planned in February, and we will be sending the full list by email. But yeah, we will be sharing recording and a copy of this presentation after this webinar.
Yep. We have, oh, hello, Rafael. We have one more question. When bio-credentials are stored on device or on CMS, so the biometric credentials will be stored on the device, not on CMS. All right. Thank you all.
Yeah, so John, thank you so much you again for this presentation, and thank you to everyone who has joined us today. Please do contact us with any additional questions you may have. And I think with that all, I will close this webinar. Thank you once again for joining, and enjoy the rest of your day. Goodbye.
Thanks all. Bye-bye.